live now? Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Okay. So first and foremost, I can't do anything on live anything without saying, hi, Mom, except I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking in the back of the room. Hi, Mom. She's here. So I'm not going to hold you up too much tonight before we get the fine things rolling with the finer people you'd rather hear from. But we do have our new t-shirts. Thank you. And I will be making sure that, those who gave us sizes for them will get your t-shirt tonight after the talk. So otherwise, I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Hilton.
Thank you. I love it when she does this. Some of you know me. I came to all the festivals until last year when I had a medical difficulty, and I'm glad to be back, seeing a lot of familiar faces and also meeting new people. And I had no idea that Rachel's brother and mother were on my field trip today, or I would have told them all kind of nice things about Rachel, and they could have argued with me if they wanted to, but perhaps not. But anyway, nice to meet you again. I think I met your mother before, but so anyway, some of you may have seen Dawn Songs advertised in various locations. Dawn Songs is a birdwatcher's guide, field guide to the poetics of migration. And I was contacted by the co-editors, Jamie Reeser and Drew Lanham. Drew Lanham's name has become quite famous. He's a black ecologist, biologist, birdwatcher who just got a MacArthur Award. And so he's a MacArthur genius. But he and Jamie Reeser, who is an accomplished poet herself, said, why don't we get, for International Migratory Bird Day, a collection of poems together. And for some reason or other, Jamie contacted me at Drew's suggestion, but I'm not a poet. But I submitted 3 poems anyway. And so I asked Rachel, could I be the warm-up act for McCormac tonight and just read one of my poems? And she said, okay, you can do that. So I've got a little whimsical poem that is part of this collection. And the collection actually goes to support the American Bird Conservancy's Conservation and Justice Fellowship Program. And this is for primarily young minority kids who are trying to get turned on to natural history. And birds are a good way to do that, as you all well know. So proceeds for the book, which you can buy on Amazon, by the way, go to that particular cause. So now that I'm a poet, this is my first time to wear my beret and my first time to read those poems in public. And it's entitled Birder Cat. I love my birds, the woman said. I feed them all year round. I love my fluffy cat as well. I got her at the pound. I feed the birds with seeds and corn. I put it on the ground. And when the cat goes out to play, sometimes I'm not around. I know my Fluffy likes my birds and chases them for fun. I've never seen her hurt a bird. No, not even one. My Fluffy wouldn't kill a bird, but she might make it run. Oh, she might swipe at tail or wing. With that, she would be done. I found a dead bird on my stoop. The head and leg were gone. It must have been a hungry owl, catching migrants before dawn. I know it wasn't Fluffy. She's resting on the lawn. Fluffy'd never bite a bird. She'd just lie there and yawn. I call myself a birder, and I do love my cat. Fluffy is a birder too, I'm very sure of that. She watches them intently from right there where she's at, beside that dead bird's carcass placed on the front porch mat. I have more for later in the week, by the way. Okay, thanks for the opportunity to read. But now I want to do a more pleasurable thing, and that's introduce tonight's speaker. And again, the festival has been going on since 2002. And for some reason or other, Jim McCormac missed the first three. It wasn't that we didn't know about him. I just think he was probably as busy as he always is. Now he's retired from having won acclaim as probably the most well-known, outstanding naturalist in the state of Ohio. And he worked for state government for many years. And you people who come from Ohio paid his salary for a long time, and it was a good investment. I'll tell you that right now. Jim is renowned for publications that he's put out. You may have seen the little guides to various flora and fauna of Ohio that are accompanied by CDs. And they're collector's items now, and I've got several I could sell to you if you want. But they're really nice, and they kind of epitomize who and what Jim is. My favorite picture of Jim is, I think, his favorite picture of himself, too. He's got his $5 million camera set up, and he's up to here in a creek someplace taking pictures, you know. But that's what he does. He goes whole hog and immerses himself in his work. And we never really know from year to year what he's going to talk about. Because one year it might be birds, another year it might be something else. And so you already got a sneak preview. He's going to talk about moths tonight. And the reason he's going to do that is because he's got a new book out about gardening with moths. And so with that, I give you Jim McCormac.
Thanks, Bill. That is pretty good. Thank you. All right, it's Moths. We got to darken the room just to create the right ambiance here. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that introduction, and the poem was great. I really like that. I think everyone else did too. So this is a weird subject. I admit that. Yeah, especially these, if we can do it.
That switch is in a different location.
Don't worry about it. It's cool. It's a lot darker now.
Over here?
Where?
Right up on there.
Nope. Oh shit! Shoot! Sorry. Oh, I'm on Facebook Live. Last time I'm ever on that. Anyway, so this book did come out. It's a collaboration with a woman named Chelsea Godfrey. 50-50 thing. She's a naturalist at a park district in Ohio, and was just fantastic to work with. Really entomologically minded, more so than I am. But this is a book I'd wanted to do for a long time, because we got to reach the mainstream, and that's what we're trying to do with this book. This is the choir, well, by and large here, and the gardeners are not necessarily the choir. So what I'm going to do is basically talk about why it's important. We made a huge case for them in the beginning of this book. Because a lot of people would look at me and go, Moths, why? Eat your clothes. Why would I want those in my yard? No, it's much more than that. So that's what we're going to go into, a little whirlwind trip. Now, I just want to say I'm glad to be down here. I took that picture yesterday on my way in. This Cathedral Falls. Those of you going on the Kanawha Falls trip tomorrow, I'm going to make sure we go look at this falls, because we're going to go right by it. But this is just one of the greatest places in the eastern United States, not just for scenery, but for the biodiversity. So it's always great to come down here. The world is full of species. We know that. Most of them haven't been discovered. We've probably only discovered 10%, maybe, something like that, of what's out there. And you can see these for yourself. 1.5 million species so far have been described on planet Earth. To cut to the chase, a huge number, 10%, 180,000 lepidopterans. Lepidopterans being moths and butterflies. Of the moths and butterflies are pikers. They are just a tiny percent of that. The moths totally overwhelm them. And then it's more important to note this. This is in the frontispiece to our book. The bottom line is all butterflies are moths. There's no such thing as butterflies. They are really one and the same, and moths are way more speciose than the butterflies are. We like butterflies because they fly and we can see them during the day. I couldn't resist this. Chelsea and I introduced ourselves in the beginning of the book in our own little section. I've been on the gardening scene for a long time, lecturing to traditional gardeners and with other speakers, traditional speakers, and I would hear this all the time: grow what makes you feel good, it's all about you, your garden. And it's a pet peeve of mine, because this is basically what we've done to these habitats. We've made a lot of the subdivision names, like Whispering Oaks, epitaphic. There are no more oaks, but they named it that, and laid waste to the natural plant communities that were there, that drive all these animals that we're down here to see. And that's what I mean by that. Let's give back and put native flora back on our landscapes. That's a prairie in central Ohio that used to be 1,500 square miles of some of the most biodiverse plant life in the United States, and it's a triumvirate of corn, bean, and wheat now. That's worst case scenario for a moth, because they are attracted to lights, and when they're attracted to situations like that, they quickly disappear. They don't get out of the sphere of those lights. That's downtown Columbus, my hometown. But this is what we want people to do. This is putting the rubber of the road in my own front yard. That's what it looks like. A little tip for people doing this. I live in traditional suburbia. The neighbors are not like me. This is a hobby. They mow in angles. You've seen that. This is like an art form to them. And so I whittle away at my yard every year. I just take more out. Someday Carl across the street is going to look over to his wife and go, "Hey, he doesn't have any yard left." But it's going to happen gradually. But one little trick is just neat boundaries, neat borders. If you do that, it looks like a garden, even though that's all native flora. And then this is the magical ingredient. Little sign. It tells them it's native plants. So people will come by, see them do it. They'll stop, they'll look at my yard, then they'll read the sign, they kind of nod their head. Oh, okay. And it's all right. Now here's a better gardener than me. This is my co-author, Chelsea's yard, and just so many great plants for moths and other insects. You can't garden specifically for any of these groups. So the book's title's a bit of a misnomer, but we just want native plants to drive things. So why care about them? This is the million-dollar question for a lot of people. A normal person that doesn't know anything about this stuff. They're intimately linked to native plants. Most animals are, certainly the insect community. But the middle one, critical parts of food webs, that's the big thing here. We're growing food, basically, as I'll show you in the talk, for birds and many other things as well. And it's easy to do. These plants, we have 150 species in the book. They're easy to grow. So here's the rub with moths. They do have a dark reputation, literally, because they're creatures of the night. Humans do not like darkness. When Edison invented that light bulb, that was like a major milestone for our species, because now we could vanquish the darkness. But moths thrive on darkness. Butterflies, contrarily, you'll not read bad press on butterflies, generally speaking. You could fill this entire building many times over with all the poetry and great things about butterflies like that. And it's good, understandable why. There's a bunch of tiger swallowtails on Joe Pye. And you can see them during the day. They're very showy. These are moths. These are diurnal moths, basically. But a lot of them are very colorful and fun to look at. And lots of field guides. They've gotten lots of ink out there in the field guide world, where ours is the first book of its kind in this country for moths, to plug them. Great Spangled Fritillary, the painted ladies, they release them at weddings. You'll be hard-pressed to find a wedding where they let a bunch of moths go. Silence of the Lambs, a lot of you saw this. Anthony Hopkins, the totem was the death's head hawk moth, not a death's head butterfly. There it is, Hannibal the Cannibal. There's the black witch, a rare vagrant from Mexico and South Texas to this area, common in the tropics. The Spanish name is Mariposa de la Muerte, the butterfly of death. Anyway, you can kind of see why it might get that rap. The legend has it, if it flies into the casa, someone will soon die in that room. That never happens with monarch butterflies. A little closer to home here, there's Mothman. Mothman was flying around this West Virginia, around the Ohio River in the 60s, is implicated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge, which killed a number of people. Mothman. There's Mothra battling Godzilla, you know, not a butterfly, Mothra. Then on it goes. So they, you know, we have a little bit of a row to hoe here to, you know, give them, put them in a good light. But you can kind of see why this might be. These are just some photos I've taken. They're a pretty creepy looking modest sphinx there. This is a bat wing, you know, creepy looking thing. But if you were to actually see it, it would fit comfortably on your thumbnail. That takes a little of the fear out of it. And on it goes. But they can also be cute, very cute, and often, to me, in many cases, showier than the butterflies can be. That's a little cutie. Dot line white. Looks like a little yak and a sheep or something, hybrid or whatever. Now, after a while, I've been shooting, I should say, I got into moths, it's a long story I won't bore you with, as a field botanist, and I collected a rare plant that had a caterpillar. Got an expert to raise it for me, and it turned out to be the first Ohio record, third record anywhere, and that really sparked this major interest in this evolutionary warfare between plants and moth larvae, as I'll talk about. But so I've been taking these pictures a long time, and you learn after a while how to show them in their best light, like that. Make them appealing and cute. There's a bisected honey locust moth, a real specialist. Its larvae only eat honey locust trees. There's a cutie. A buck moth with it's like ferns have been bolted to its head. And they're packed with pheromone sensors, and that's how he finds the females. Some of these silk moths, that is a giant silk moth, they can sense female pheromones from a mile away. Unerringly. You can put the females in a paper bag, seal it up, and put it on your back porch. These will be sitting on it the next morning. That's fine-tuned. And it's all through those antennae. It's just an amazing world. That's I think a really cool one. It looks like a bighorn sheep or something. Eastern tent caterpillar, one of the most maligned caterpillars. This is the one that makes the silken nests in cherry trees in spring. Totally native. You'll get guys out there with flamethrowers, I'm not kidding, loading these out of the trees. Like, that is such overkill, it's crazy. But that's what it becomes if they get a chance. They're native, they're not invasive or anything like that. There's a hairdo for you. White flannel moth. It's a fascinating world. Here's a spider mimic, and I have shown this to many people, and they'll go, they don't even know it's a moth, really. They think it's a spider. And that's a common form of mimicry in this world. They're trying to look like things that birds don't want to eat. There's a cutie, a pink and yellow moth. So you might ask yourself, all right, in a world of crypsis being camouflage, why would you want to look like a Teletubby? Pink and yellow, you stick out like a sore thumb. You can't hide from anyone until you see that. So its only hosts are maples in the genus Acer. That's red maple. The first brood comes out when the samaras, or the fruit of the maple, are pink and yellow, and then it makes sense. There's always a reason. Well, evolution of the order Lepidoptera goes back a long ways, 190 million years or so, since the first fossilized evidence of them. And that started with moths. Butterflies diverged much, much later. The moths way predate butterflies. That's why they're so speciose comparatively, and are the major bulk of all the Lepidoptera on planet Earth. So in the region covered by our book, I'll show you that region in a minute, but it covers 8 states or parts thereof. We estimate there could be 10,000 species. I'll just give you a closer to home comparison. West Virginia's probably had about 140 to 50 butterflies ever found here, counting rare stuff. Probably West Virginia hosts something on the order of 4,000 moth species. So when you get in this part of the world, they dominate by a factor of 30 or more. Way more of them. So you could say that they're more important than butterflies, but to me that's not the right way to think about it. But they are doing heavier lifting just because there are so many more of them. And that led to this book finally. It was a couple-year COVID with delayed project, but it finally came out, and it came out early. And interestingly, just as a little aside, I'm going to do a series of books with Ohio University Press, who did this. They were great to work with, but this is what they wanted to start with. And I said, are you sure? Moths, But it's already ready to go into its third printing in a couple months. So I'm not saying anything about the book. I don't know if it's because the book's good or not. I think that interest is there, though. People are really keen on these, which is good to see. Anyway, there's the region covered by the book. Now, as another aside, one of the greatest mistakes, in my view, an author can make with some book like this is to limit it to a state. Because you got to market these things. Why would I limit it to Ohio? It's like, okay, I cross over to Indianapolis, Indiana, and it won't work anymore. No, of course it will. Animals have no respect whatsoever for politically defined arbitrary boundaries like that. So the flora in this region is largely the same, and the flora drives the moths. So that's why it's the way it is. And we can sell a lot more books, hopefully. So here's an example in my own state of Ohio. Butterflies in Ohio, we've had about 140 species, just like West Virginia. But only a half or so. Like if you were really hardcore, you might find 100 of these in a year in Ohio if you really beat the bushes. 100 species. We get more moth species in one night, mothing, than all those butterflies combined. This woman lives in southeast Ohio, 12 and a half acres. For that part of the world, it's very ordinary wooded habitat. There's nothing special about it. She got hooked on moths only a decade ago at our first Mothapalooza. It's in the book, but crazy event, a lot of fun, fills up every year. Diane is now up to 1,464 species on that 12 and a half acre property. She told me she had about 40 butterflies or 50 or something like that. There's the dramatic difference. We have a special section on her in the book. She's just an amazing person. Now, a common question is, how do I tell them apart? Well, after a while, when you look at enough moths, just the gestalt of them is different, you'll know. But these are big, mostly differences that hold up. A big one's just nocturnal. But there's exceptions galore. There always is in natural history. So there's day-flying moths, too. Butterflies, though, they don't fly at night much, although they will a little bit. Antennae different. Mostly moths are fat and hairy, and these are smooth and slender. And then the way the transformation occurs in a cocoon, which is a leafy, silk-bound structure that looks very natural as opposed to a hard chrysalis or case. But all those vary somewhat. So what do they do? Why would I care, you know? Well, I'll tell you a few things. One, they're incredibly prolific in their reproduction. So it's carpet bombing reproduction, basically. This happened on my front door. These are really common. They're called salt marsh moths, female on the left. I counted that once. It was something like 700 eggs, and she may lay other batches, too. Some will lay several thousand eggs. So as soon as you see that, you know the mortality rate is sky high. So these larvae are running this incredible predatorial gauntlet, and if you want to get a couple of them back to reproductive stages, you have to do this. A lot of estimates, 1% might make it through there. That means it's a lot of food out there for being eaten by someone. Well, Lepidoptera 101, it's a perfect metamorphosis, or a 4-part reproductive cycle that begins with the eggs. We'll start there at least. I chose a big species so you can see it better. This is a hickory horn devil, which is the caterpillar of the regal moth. Here's a guy, wrapped up. He'll pop out of there within the chew his way out. That one's already chewed his way out, and these are still undeveloped down here. And that lasts a few days like that or so. Here's one that just came out of the egg. You would not recognize that as a caterpillar with your naked eye. We're talking 2 millimeters, something like that. That's the wonders of macro photography. And you can clearly tell there it's a caterpillar, but it is a dinky little guy. Well, I'm going to jump to a different species to show how they grow. They molt. Most of our caterpillars of moths go through 5 molts. Every time they shed their skin, they come out larger. And very few creatures on Earth increase as much in biomass as caterpillars do. Thousands of times from beginning to end, in some case. This is a black-wave flannel moth, and that's the old skin. He looked completely different. He looked like remember those old trolls with the wild hair? You had his kids. That's what the caterpillar looked like now. Now he looks like Trump's hair or something like that. You would think it was a different species altogether, and this is really common too with caterpillars. They change morphology as they grow. Back to the original caterpillar, this is the third instar. Instar is the term for the stages of molts between, and now it's imitating to almost to perfection shed walnut flowers that fall in the leaves, and it hides in plain sight. It's big now, you wouldn't miss this one, but curled up and you'd blow it off as old walnut flowers sitting on the leaves. It's a form of crypsis, it's common. By the time you hit, it's the penultimate instar, the next to last, fourth instar, you won't miss this thing. It's a beast. I saw this in my car moving in a hickory tree and got it. It's really spectacular, but nothing like it will become in the fifth instar. Now it's a giant green monster with horns and whatnot. It is as big as a hot dog. That's the common comparison. So people go, yeah, sure, man, hot dog, caterpillar. You can hear it eating the foliage 5 feet away. I'm not kidding. It's giant. And you don't believe me about the hot dog, probably. There you go. We got this one night at a caterpillar event we do. And there's this poor guy there, I forget who it was, and I go, hey man, I'll give you like $5 if you run into town and get me some hot dog buns, because no one had it. And the guy did, it was great, so there you go. And that's what it becomes, that's the end stage. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be crude to Facebook Live out there, but basically this is a flying gonad. It's one of the giant silk moths. Has no mouth parts, it doesn't feed. All that work to get to those caterpillars, and that'll live about a week. If it's a male, its sole job is to find the female and mate with her. If it's she, then lay the eggs, and they're done. That's it.
How big is that, Jim?
The size of a bat. We're talking a big, big silk moth. And then just to emphasize this, Chelsea took this photo and it's utterly amazing. This is the tobacco hornworm that some of you have killed. I know you have, because they eat your tomato plants. It's a native moth. That's a second instar, second growth stage. Here's the last one. Somehow she got that on there for long enough for a photo. And then the first instar was probably a third that size. So we're talking just thousands of times increase in biomass. I want to go on an aside because of that species, and here's how some of you at least know it. There it is, doing its thing. So this species of native sphinx moth it's wedded strictly to members of the nightshade family, the Solanaceae, which the tomato's in. So then we come along and we put all these tomatoes out and it liked them. Now we want to kill the moths because of that. They still eat the native nightshades as well, though. But here it is in the wild doing its thing. The giant, it's a big, almost hummingbird-sized moth. And this is on a non-native 4 o'clock, but you can see the tongue, the tongue goes way out into the flower. Well, these big sphinx moths are incredibly important to the pollination of our native orchids. And one of them being the federally threatened prairie fringed orchid. So I got permission to go to a site at night and sit there, and I felt like a dummy for a while because I'm sitting there, camera all set up on that orchid, and nothing's going on, I'm waiting for a moth to come in, so crossing my fingers and hoping. And then after a little bit, boom, in it comes. It was like this ghostly wraith that just appeared and went around and plumbed every flower on that plant, and then went to other ones. Voila, what was it? It was the Carolina Sphinx, the hornworm that eats people's tomatoes plants, pollinating one of the rarest plants in the Midwest. So I wouldn't kill them all if you get them on your tomatoes. Let a few go. Look at that tongue. So plants have this evolutionary, it's not warfare with moths, it's a love for moths. They want them to come. So orchids, you can see where that red goes. That's going down what's called a nectar spur. And a lot of orchids have nectar spurs. The reward, the nectar reward, is at the very base of that. So what it's doing, it's selecting for things that can hover in front of the flower, have a proboscis that can get, up half a foot or so down into that. And then it's got itself a highly mobile pollinator that'll go to far-flung plants and then cross-pollinate them. It's a really interesting thing and extremely common with orchids. Here's another example in Ohio. I just showed Chelsea. We happened to be in the area. I said, hey man, you got to go see this colony of tubercled rain orchids. It's incredible. That's what all those leaves in that wet woods are. Full flower. There's the flower spikes. And we start looking, we're photographing, it looks like a bunch of little mosquitoes swarming around the flowers. And it was a great plume moths. These dinky little tiny moths, about the size of a mosquito, hundreds of them on there. And they're pollinating it. And this is another Chelsea amazing shot. There's the actual pollinia, or the case the pollen is in from that orchid, stuck to its proboscis. Proof, you know, that's what they're doing. So it's happening on a lot of levels, very important to our orchids, not just our orchids, but then as a further aside to that, that little moth I just showed you was spawned from wild grape. Wild grapes don't get a lot of love either. Foresters tell you to remove them from your woodland and all. They're all native. They are super heavy lifters in moth production. Extremely important. So you don't ever want to kill all the grapes off. And that's what those moths came off. On the contrary, the non-native garden plants that I was sort of lamenting at the beginning, those have no evolutionary chemical history with caterpillars. The caterpillars can't eat them. All the plants, all the chemicals in plants, are a lot of them, they're there as herbivory deterrents. They ward things off from eating them. That's how plants defend themselves. So when you take something like daylilies from the old world and introduce them to our moths, no go. Almost nothing will eat them. That's why native plants are so important. It's chemistry. Here's a good example of that. This is a common plant many of you would know called dogbane. It's a milkweed ally. And that sap that it exudes is extremely toxic. So it's successful in eliminating most herbivory from caterpillars, but something always cracks the chemical code. In this case, it's a beautiful little tiger moth named for the plant, dogbane tiger moth. That's all that eats. Specialization is more common than generalization in this world, most animal groups. Here's a generalist. The word for this in Lepidoptera is polyphagus. It literally means many plants. So these hickory tussock moths, caterpillars, they can eat hundreds of species of plants. That's very rare. The specialists are way more common than these generalists. Those are the winners, basically, because they're probably going to survive, you know, losses of plants and whatnot, where the specialists are largely doomed. So the caterpillar phase it's the longest actively mobile part of the moth life cycle, and with very few exceptions, often far longer than the moth is around. Here's a cool example of one. This is a really interesting looking caterpillar that will give you a nice nettle-like sting. Tip with caterpillars, if they have spines, don't touch them, because a lot of times they're envenomating spines and can really hurt. That's an Io moth caterpillar that becomes that. The reason I'm showing you this is a real generalist. Most silk moths, which this is, are not generalists at all. This one is. It's even been found eating corn plants, which is amazing. By the way, that's a bird deterrent. So when they're at rest, they fold those wings in. They just look like an obscure little lemon wedge sitting there. Mr. Titmouse comes up, hey, and starts poking, boom, it flicks those out like a switchblade. All of a sudden, these huge, scary eyes are in that titmouse face, backs off. Or that's the idea, anyway. Now, here's a real specialist of a much hated plant. I always go to bat for these hated plants, but that's sawbriar. Greenbrier is another word for these. There's about half a dozen species. You've all walked through it. Incredibly thorny in woodland understories. Rips your jeans. Hunters hate this stuff. But man, does it produce some cool moths. They're all native, by the way. That's my photo to argue that it's actually showy in fall, which it is. Look at this one. This was a holy grail for me for years. I won't even bore you with how I finally found this, but it was a lot of work. But this is the old leaf of the greenbrier over here. So as they detach, they often crisp up and curl around the stems, and then they shiver in the breeze. Here's the caterpillar. There's its head, there's its tail, it's got this appendage. If you go puff air on it, it starts twisting, just like the leaf in the wind. It's really amazing. It's a big caterpillar. So hard to see that, but it only lives on greenbrier. Extreme specialization. That looks like something out of a Dali painting, Salvador Dali painting, this completely exotic looking larvae, which it is, and good old black locust, which is blooming profusely. You probably noticed it on your trip in here. That's its host plant. That's a bizarre one. That's a monkey slug. The theory here, this is common. They're in trees all around us right now. That's a mimic of shed tarantula skins. So you go, why? We don't have tarantulas up here. That's a bird deterrent. When you see this kind of camouflage, this is for birds. You know, birds are huge predators of these, but they're not the only thing. But the origins of these are tropical, that group of moths, where they do have tarantulas, and that's where a lot of our songbirds that eat them, that's where they spend the winter. So apparently not much wants to eat a shed tarantula skin. Here's why, how they get, the slug moths are really cool. Here's why they get that name. There's that same thing from the underside. So all their legs are fused and they just sort of glide like a slug, and they actually leave a little trail of slime, but it's silk, not slime, behind them. So hence the name slug moth. There's another specialist, and one of the most this could win a larval beauty pageant if there was such a thing. Look, that's a pawpaw sphinx that only lives on pawpaw trees. Man, is it stunning. There's what it becomes. This is another thing that's really common in this world. It's a reverse ugly duckling tail, where the larvae often greatly outshine the adults that they turn into. Not that that's not cool, but I mean, come on, look at that. That's way cooler. There's a stinging rose caterpillar. It's well named. It will give you a sting if you touch it. Some people are really allergic. I should also note these are envenomating spines. They have little sacs at the base. They're under pressure. It's like a hypodermic syringe. So when you touch those spines, it shoots that stuff into you. It's not passive, and man, it really can hurt. But look, it looks like a sea slug that jumped out of the coral reef.
Like a ho-ho kind of cake.
Yeah.
Dessert, yeah.
Good luck eating that, ho-ho. Yeah, Cecropia. This is our largest regularly occurring moth around here in this state and the state in our book. It's really funny. And that one doesn't sting. It looks like it could do a number on you, but it's really not. And here's what it becomes. Our biggest regularly occurring moth. There's a great example of bird defenses right here. This is a specialist, almost a specialist on walnut trees, and it's a sound-making caterpillar. So caterpillars have little rows of holes, those orange things in this case, and they're air exchange holes. This one can force air out of those with such velocity it squeaks loudly. I learned this. So the first time I saw one, I'm like, oh, what is this? I go pick it up to move it to take its picture, and it squeaks really loud and starts flailing. I mean, it was involuntary. I dropped it on the ground. I could hear it down in the grass squeaking at me. Well, you're a little bird. I mean, hey, that's, you know, I'll leave it alone. Find some easier target. That's what that's about, almost undoubtedly. And there's what it becomes. It's really cool looking with those pinkish tinge on a walnut tree. There's one of the another holy grail. You can't even make this thing up. It's called a Harris's 3-spot. So at certain turns, it looks like a bird dropping mimic. That's a really common defense in this world. Other angles, it looks like a spider, and it even almost has the face of one on the back. But these are the cool things. Remember, we learned they shed and molt. So that's the head capsule. That's basically a football helmet. It's really hard. And when it sheds, somehow it retains the old football helmets on these sticky setae or hairs. So when a parasitoid insect, which I'll tell you a little about those in a second, like a wasp or a fly land on this, bam, it whacks them with the football helmet really quick and knocks them off. It's not the only thing that does this either. There's a close-up of the little head capsules. They're flails. They're just flails, a defensive flail. And look what it becomes. Just this amazing, I mean, all this stuff is out there. It's not even rare. Very little I'm showing is rare. These are easily findable. Here's another example of flails. This is a specialist on cottonwoods and willows, primarily aspens as well. Those are its anal prolobes, and they're modified into long lips, and it's very good. If you take a pencil and just touch the tip of it, you're going to get the pencil whipped by those. And look what it becomes. You know, I think the caterpillar is cooler, but it's kind of cool. But the real way that these try and avoid these legions of predators, birds being an enormous group that goes after them, is just amazing crypsis. I mean, look at that. So this is in autumn. In general, caterpillars reach their the epic numbers and sizes and maturity levels in fall, August, September, early September. And that's when the leaves are turning, the necrotic tissues coming out as the chlorophyll fades away and all that. And the caterpillar even is dappled with what appears to be necrotic tissue and just hides in there, and you can't see them to save your life. There's what that one becomes too. It's a really cool little sphinx moth, a lot of colors in there. Here's an elm specialist. You know, we have two common elms, the American elm and the red or slippery elm. So elms have big serrations on the margin of the leaves. The double-toothed prominent caterpillar also has those, and it always eats in from the edge of the leaf. It literally becomes one with the leaf. Big cat, but really hard to see because of that. Here's one that probably does it even better. This is a checker fringe prominent on a black maple in this case, and again, becoming one with the leaf. It's back just matching the leaf venation and all that, and that's birds. Whenever you see that, that's for visual predators. Look what it becomes. Talk about mimicry as an adult moth, too. This is why you don't see a lot of moths during the day, because they look like that. They become sticks. Here's another cool one that's just cool I wanted to show you. This is a crowned slug. It's in trees. Like if we were here in early September and went out tonight after this, we would easily find these probably. It's not rare. Just it's a magical world that's largely unknown to most people. There's one of the myriad oak specialists. Oaks foster more diversity in caterpillars than any plant by a long shot. And some of them are really exotic looking. Here's a specialist on honey locusts. Honey locusts are native, and they're wonderful trees that support a lot of things. That's one of the prettiest of all caterpillars. Here's proof you can grow something like that in your yard if you want to, if you plant the honey locust. That was at a native plant sale at a conference I was at, nurseries down there, and this nurseryman comes running over to me. He goes, "Hey Jim, these moths are like mating on my Helianthus decapetalis sign." And I go, "Oh, that's cool. You know, they're honey locust moths, and these are the eggs coming out. They're still coupled together, and they were right under a honey locust tree. That's where it came from." And this was very urban. This was not the wilds. No one does it better than this one, though. Almost a frame-filling shot. This is on a blazing star, rough blazing star. This is the camouflaged looper. Let me circle him for you. There. So the head's at the top. Whatever this caterpillar is eating, it decorates its body with the flower parts. So if it's on yarrow, it's going to be red. You know, if it's on a sunflower, it's going to be yellow. And the only reason you often see these is the flower will move. And you'll go, "Why did that flower just move?" And it's this little caterpillar. Look what it becomes. It's a little beauty. It's one of our emeralds. This is really common too, by the way, where the caterpillar goes by a different name than the moth it becomes. That's very common. So camouflage looper equals a wavy lined emerald. This would fit very comfortably on a quarter. It's a little guy. There's one of these stink bugs right there. This is how most of them try and run the predatorial gauntlet, though. They just look like the plant. To perfection in many cases. No one does this better than the inchworms. We've all seen little inchworms. So they don't have the medial prolegs or the four sets in the middle, only on either end. So they do this looping gait. This is the family Geometridae, and it's it's one of the biggest families of moths. And their caterpillars are inchworms. And during the day, these are nocturnal. Most caterpillars come out at night because bird pressure subsides significantly at night. And so do many insects that prey on them. So during the day, they just sit there. They have usually wire. They attach back up to the twig, and they just lock in position, usually on a twig that's the same size that they are. And just it's incredibly difficult to see these things, even for a chickadee or something that's sharp-eyed. There's what it becomes. Pretty cool-looking little orange moth. Very common, a supremely common species, as are many of the etchworms. So what I'm leading up to is tube steaks, basically. They're food. They're tube steaks on legs with a mortality, in many cases, probably 99%. You don't want to ever come back as one of these if you believe in karma like that. Your chances aren't good. But they're going to great use. This is just nature, how it works, you know, producing these surpluses to feed other things, higher organisms usually. Here's a pretty dramatic graphic that shows that. This is done from the Canadians, the Carolinian forest, which is the extension of the deciduous forest where it ends. But that's caterpillar. This is comparative biomass. There's salamanders, showing you how important they are in these rich forests. Chipmunk, look, he's huge. Red-eyed vireo, Freddy Krueger to the caterpillars. That's what they eat. Huge. Here's a moose. You can't even see it. We would just put a white-tailed deer there here. The upshot of that, if you believe that, and I think there's a lot of reason where that's probably fairly accurate, but if we took all the caterpillars in West Virginia in early September and piled them up, it'd be this massive pile. If we took all the state's white-tailed deer, the caterpillar pile would dwarf the deer pile. And no one even knows this is going on, hardly. It's pretty dramatic and very important for animals. So they're just this incredibly important part of the food chain. That's what we did the book for, just to bring this out, how important it is. So if you look at a scene in early fall, you know, like that's Shawnee State Forest in Ohio, there's just inestimable millions and millions of caterpillars in a scene like that. And they're going to good use. They're feeding our little feathered friends, the main reason we're down here. We wouldn't have a lot of these birds. They would wink out if we didn't have moths and the native plants that host them. Little ruby-crowned kinglets, they like the little inchworms. They go for littler caterpillars, but they eat a lot. But they themselves are vulnerable to being eaten. This is the food chain. On it goes. So these native plants feed these caterpillars that feed something like that feed things like that. And on it goes. It's just, you don't want to break any of these processes. Cooper's hawk in my backyard. Juvenile, giving me the look. Look at that. How would you like, you wouldn't want to be a ruby-crowned kinglet and see that looking at you. So they are nocturnal. So to get a lot of those photos in general and to find caterpillars, we're out a lot at night. It's the way to do it. It's very hard to find them during the day. But like this hidden army, they emerge under cover of darkness. And one of the tricks to finding them are black light or UV flashlights. They've gotten a lot cheaper. And a lot of them glow under that. That's a little slug moth caterpillar glowing purple under it. And you can see them a long ways off. It really ups your odds of finding them. But it's not just birds that eat them. That's a bold jumping spider. Spiders take a lot of caterpillars, and certainly the moths as well. There's a juvenile stink bug. They're called soldier bugs. They're predatory ones. It's got himself a black wave flannel moth caterpillar and is eating it. This is a beetle that specializes by and large on caterpillars, called a caterpillar hunter. And it's a big showy beetle, and they run around tree trunks at night, finding the caterpillars and eating them with those huge mandibles. This is really insidious and less noticeable, but is probably the greatest source of mortality, even beyond birds: wasps and flies. So this is a salt marsh caterpillar that's very hairy. The evolution of seti, or long hairs like that, is probably to ward off these insects from laying eggs on them. So the fly is just waiting and waiting, and I ran out of time. I watched him for 20 minutes. I wanted him to go lay eggs on it. I'm sorry, caterpillar, but to see it, because he's waiting for a chance to get to the unarmed belly, where he can get the eggs onto it. They hatch very quickly, and the grubs bore right into the victim and eat it alive. Yeah. That's your fate. Yeah. And here's evidence of a tachinid fly. This is common too. You'll see this a lot. Little white dots on them. Those are the eggshells of a tachinid fly. It's a walking dead caterpillar. There's nothing you can do for it. If you even tried to pick them off, it's too late. They're already in there eating it. The wasps, though, they do a lot of damage too, in very interesting ways. It's not damage, I shouldn't call it that. They're just big predators of caterpillars. This is a thread-waisted wasp trundling a caterpillar that way, way outweighs it to a crypt that's pre-made in the ground. The caterpillar's fate, it's paralyzed, it's not dead. And she lays an egg or two in there in the crypt with it, seals them in, and when Junior hatches, he's a little maggot or grub, he has fresh meat because she didn't kill it. It's paralyzed, and it gets eaten. Not very fun. This is one a lot of people see. This is a catalpa sphinx, or catalpa hornworm, that's just bristling with old wasps. So they ate it alive, and they, like the movie Alien or whatever that was, they burst out of the victim, and then in short order, they pop the cap off the cocoon, and out flies the new wasp. So lots of that going on too. Here's a side. So we have 22 inset boxes in this book, I think of them as intellectual speed bumps. They just didn't really fit with the agenda, but they're cool. This is one of them, so we put them in there. Here's Karmic Revenge, basically. This is a glorious looking thing. It's Moths, sooty-winged chowsela, and it's a predator of wasp larvae, a group of wasps that actually eats caterpillars. You've all seen them. These are the Polistes paper wasps that are under eaves. And they pack a punch. I've been stung. It's not fun. And they often prey on caterpillars and masticate the meat and feed it to the grubs in there. That's what that wasp, the moth sneaks in there and lays eggs near the nest, not on it. And then the caterpillars hatch and they climb right up into the nest and go into the cells and start eating the wasp grubs that look just like them in there. It's fantastic. You can't even make that up. As a quick aside, a friend of mine showed me a picture of one, and the nest, that's the actual nest. And I go, man, that's too cool. She's parasitized that nest. I got to go over there. I went at night. I go, at night, they won't be as violent. They all came out, and I backed off. I go, I'm not going to mess with it. And we went back after they were dead in early winter and got the nest and looked at it, and it was full of the little caterpillars. Here's one peeking out right there. So birds and caterpillars, that's what I wanted to focus on, especially to a group like this, because people relate to birds. More people probably spend more money, and there are more appreciators of birds than about any other group of organisms out there. Well, there's Freddy again, Freddy Krueger, the red-eyed vireo, and if you watch red-eyed vireos for any length of time, you'll see that posture. They cock their head, and the reason why, they're looking on the undersurfaces of the leaves, because that's where a lot of the caterpillars will hide during the day. Probably 90% of their diet is caterpillars. They're specialists. They're shrikes, basically. They're related to the shrikes, and they have little hooked bill or stiff hooked bills. That's to rip the caterpillar asunder when they find it. And this is conservative. 1 million red-eyed vireos roughly invade Ohio, just to take my state, every year from South America where they winter. That group of red-eyed vireos eats at least 30 million caterpillars a day during the summer. That's one species. This throws how epic this is, the scale of this whole thing in. But a lot of birds eat them. Vegans. A song sparrow is a good vegan most of the year. Not when they have chicks in the nest, because the chicks grow on protein, So here's a song sparrow with 4 or 5 prominent moth caterpillars in its bill going to a nest that was just about 10 feet away. Going to stuff them down those little gullets, get those little babies growing. Scarlet tanagers, we wouldn't have them without caterpillars. There's a warbling vireo, another menace to the caterpillar world. Few do it like the cuckoos. We have 2 species. That's yellow-billed. We have black-billed. Major caterpillar predators. It's the dominant part of their diet, undoubtedly. That's why you hear cuckoos at night a lot. They'll vocalize a lot during the night. I've heard this many, many times. That's probably because the caterpillars are so active. They're out at night all along. So we wouldn't have those if there weren't moths and caterpillars. But this gets much bigger than us in these dumb political boundaries that we ignored with the region of our book, because these birds don't respect political boundaries. A lot of the things I just showed you, and many more, warblers, vireos, and whatnot, they're going to other parts of the world. This is this epic flow of energy exchange spawned by our native plants here, growing all these caterpillars, fueling this fantastic migration that's evolved from tropical regions. But it's a seasonal thing, so they can't stay with us. They retreat back. In the case of the scarlet tanager, the regions where there's maybe 100 other species of tanagers, but they win a reward by escaping that competition briefly to come capitalize on ours, where there isn't nearly so much pressure among allies. It's just amazing how it all works. Pine warbler, preening itself, one of our beauties, a very well-named bird, specialist on our relatively few native pine trees. But if you've ever watched one feed, they're very slow and methodical. They don't rage around like a redstart or anything like that. And the reason probably is what they're after are these specialists on pine needles that look just like the pine needles. If you raged around, you wouldn't see the things. So they creep methodically about, seeking these zowie caterpillars that are spitting image of the needles. Yellowthroats, wouldn't have them, weren't caterpillars. Chestnut-sided warblers are big caterpillar predators. on an oak, by the way. You know, there's a reason they like to be around oaks because of the sheer number of caterpillars. Golden wing warbler specializes in little caterpillars with that little fine bill. It pokes open their shoulders and gets them. Prairie warbler, one of the smartest little warblers. These males, these are not good males in the female world. They come up, basically mate with the female and go back to the Caribbean or whatever. They're only up with us maybe 3 months of the year. But when they are, they're eating a lot of caterpillars. Kentucky warbler, one of the most beautiful of our warblers, another big caterpillar eater. So our mourning warblers, very coveted by birders. And on it goes. There's a Nashville warbler, fresh from Central America up along Lake Erie, prying open grape leaves because it's a bivouac for a caterpillar in there, and it knows it, and it's extracting it right there. There's a little northern parula warbler, freshly arrived in mid-April, carrying a little inchworm caterpillar it just caught. It's a perfect synergy of leaf production, leaf out when the birds come back, which spawns all the first crop of caterpillars, and they're there to exploit it. A cerulean warbler caught in the act last year in Shawnee State Forest with one of the prominent caterpillars, and it was a boom year for these caterpillars. So when I took the photo, I didn't know what it was. It turns out it's a Georgian prominent moth caterpillar. I saw them everywhere that day. They were just hanging from strings all over the place. It was a boom year. This is why a lot of bird populations are cyclical, like cerulean warblers. Because during a boom year, they have so much food, their nesting success soars, and they spawn a lot more. Next year's likely to be much leaner than that. It's natural cycles. There's one I took the same day, just hanging from its little belay line out in the forest, same species. The worst named warbler, arguably, that we have, the worm-eating warbler, a spectacular bird. It should be the caterpillar-eating warbler. They wouldn't eat, a self-respecting worm eater would not eat a worm, you know, on the ground. They don't do that. It's caterpillars. Yellow-throated warblers, cerulean warblers, all these things, to the point that if this cycle was really badly broken, we would lose the soundscape of these forests, because that's provided by all those birds I just showed you and many more. There's another angle, too, that I really think is important to at least mention, and that's us, and the amount of money we spend on this hobby. It's big. That's McGee Marsh, right. And they're all, I guarantee, they're all Googling or goggling over warblers, you know. It's funny, this time of year you might see 115, 20 species in a trip up there. Everyone singles out the warblers. Yeah, we had 120, but here's all the warblers we had. People love warblers, but these warblers are dependent on caterpillars. But all these birders out here, this group, everywhere, all over the place, doing it, spend a ton of money. That survey needs updated. There's been a recent one since I haven't updated, but the bottom line is that bullet point right there. They're spending $75 billion a year on this hobby. That's a lot of money. That's twice Coca-Cola's worldwide gross receipts. So here's the upshot. If we had some holy grail magical leader out there on our side, if you could get all those cats together and herd them together on the same page, they would not screw with stuff we didn't want them to mess with. It would be the most powerful lobby out there, but we're not like that. Maybe someday, who knows? But anyway, we're spending a lot of money. Politicians need to know that. The way they find each other is amazing. This pheromone reproduction system. That's a Luna moth. There's the big pheromone receptor, ferns bolted to its head to find the female pheromones. And there's a Luna moth, freshly hatched. He's pristine. So the first thing that people usually notice about Lunas are the tail streamers. And when you see it resting in the forest, the obvious conclusion is, oh, it's disruptive camouflage. It really helps it blend in with those leaves, and it does, but that's not the main reason for the tails. It's bats. This is a red bat resting in beach leaves, like they do. So there's about 13 species of bats in this part of the world. Their number one food source is moths. Second is beetles. So when the Luna moth has to go into the air column to follow the pheromone trail, it becomes imperiled by bats. Bats are up there. And as you know, they use sonar to locate their subject, pinging sound bites off of whatever it is they're after. So in the case of the Luna moth, the tails flutter. I've seen this many times in flight. The sonar goes right to the fluttering tails, and they often end up with just a handful of tails. The French fry in the middle gets away. and can reproduce. This was actually done in a lab. They put, kind of cruel to the Luna moths, but they took a bunch of Luna moths and bats, put them in an enormous room, and took the tails off a lot of the Luna moths. The mortality skyrocketed amongst that group. The ones that they left the tails, 80% or so survival. A lot of missing tails, though. So that's the reason for the tails. And here's one that just got attacked. And this is really common. We get these at the moth sheets all the time, and that's the reason. A bat just went after it, but missed the important part and just got the tails and wings. I saw that with my own eyes. That's a big polyphemus moth. They just have a crazily erratic flight that makes it hard for the bat to hit. And the bat was hot on its heels and took a lot of wax out of it. Those were all those fresh bites. But the moth got under the eaves and out of the air column and survived. So they're doing, I mean, bats, we wouldn't have bats if it weren't for this group of insects. It gets a lot, this evolutionary warfare between moths and bats is absolutely incredible. We're only learning the tip of the iceberg. Probably that's that dog-bane tiger moth I showed you the caterpillar of early. They produce a pseudo-echolocation. So they hear, moths have ears. They have 2 ears. They hear quite well, a lot of them. And they hear the sonar, the pings from the bats. When they get close enough to that one in flight, it sends out a barrage of pseudo-echolocations or pings and jams the radar. Bat goes right by. It gets even crazier. We have a whole section in the book on that too. But pollinators, they're really important as pollinators, and gardeners would probably relate more to this. You just got to go out after night. The plants that attract butterflies are going to attract a lot of moths. Just go out, light them up with a flashlight, and you'll see things like that spotted grass moth on common milkweed. Here's a bold-feathered grass moth on milkweed. Milkweed's great for moths. They love it and swarm it. White flowers in general are really good. The evolution of white flowers probably has a lot to do with moths. It's more luminescent and probably just attracts them visually at night. And that's buttonbush. Buttonbush is a wonderful ornamental plant. Some dayflyers, that's probably a lightning firefly mimic. Fireflies are fairly toxic. That would be the reason for it. But yellow-colored scape moths fly during the day. That's on remember the mistflower, one of the sunflower family plants, which are very productive. That's the cover of the book. That was in a garden. This is Culver's root, a wonderful native that's very, very ornamental, and moths love it. White flowers. So it is very easy to grow these things and produce your own crop of moths, which are going to help. That's a variegated cutworm. The sod specialists, like my neighbors who manicure, they hate cutworms because a lot of them, they're all native, but they'll eat turf grass and they try and kill them with toxic chemicals and whatnot. But the caterpillars of those are very important for a bird that I think everyone in here likes, bluebirds. We've all seen bluebirds sit on fence posts, dive down into the grass. That's what they're after, cutworm caterpillars. So the moth I just showed you. So it's easy to grow these things. We have lots of little recipes in the book, but another popular moth is the hummingbird moths. They fly during the day. Look at little infant hummingbirds flying around. This is one of them, the hummingbird clearwing on one of our mints, the downy or hairy wood mint, which is in our book. There's its beautiful little caterpillar, but the caterpillar needs a different set of plants. So you want the mints for the adult moths to nectar at. The other one we have is the snowberry clearwing that's more black. Here it is on wild bergamots, simple plant to grow. And they love them. And there's its little caterpillar. But here's what they come off of. This is the other part of the ingredient. You have to have members of the honeysuckle family, native, not the nasty stuff that's invading everywhere. That's super easy to grow, wild honeysuckle, and the caterpillars eat that, and then you'll get the little moths. As an aside, this is coralberry. This is another host plant for those two hummingbird species, robins and other fruit-eating birds like the fruit in the wintertime. But the best ones are viburnums, arrowwood viburnum, which is even a brown thumb like me can grow this and do grow it. And then you're going to have the hummingbird moths. There's one eating that very plant. So I'm going to finish just with a few families. Sweet gum is wonderful, very ornamental. Some people don't like the fruit, but can't have everything. But it produces all kinds of specialists, including large Paectes. This only lives on sweet gum trees. Sweet gum is a southerner, but where I live, I'm just north of it, but I proudly have a sweet gum in my yard, and I don't care. I think we confuse people by getting real finicky about nativity, the ranges. Most things native in that area are not going to become invasive out of it. Ferns are great, even ferns. They attract puppies. There's some puppies in there. I said, hey, you guys, get out of my shot. They don't listen to anyone, so there they are. They're in the shot. But that's New York fern. This is a wonderful thing that grows in shade, so it's good for that. And it spawns gold-spotted ghost moths, this big spectacular moth, among many other things, but this one's even cooler. That's the pink-shaded fern moth. This one came off that very colony of ferns I just showed you, right next to a house. The sunflower family is a great one. That's that same picture on mistflower, but that moth has to have sedges, because that's what the caterpillars eat. Sedges can be highly ornamental. We suggest a number of species in the book. That's one of the prettiest of all, bucksbaum sedge. Even aquatic gardens have spawn moths. That's the prettiest native water lily by a long shot, the fragrant water lily. It has its own little group of moths, including this little beauty. You can see it during the day. They sit on the lily pads. And its caterpillar eats inside of the underwater stalk, inside of the stalk, so it doesn't drown. That's a very ornamental hibiscus, a lot of nice native hibiscus, and that spawns some really cool things as well, including one of our spectacular bird-dropping mimics, the tufted bird-dropping mimic. This is, of course, bird defense. You know, look like a bird dropping. The birds will leave you alone. A lot of those. A personal favorite in the rose family, ninebark. Highly ornamental shrub. This was taken on a field trip down here, by the way. Look, the glorious Habrosini. If you want a glorious Habrosini, plant a ninebark. Look at you. Who wouldn't want that flying around your yard? Redbud, seen here with flowering dogwood. This is a real heavy hitter. Very easy little treelet, basically, to grow. There's spotted Apatalotes on one with its little cherry booties taken from the underside. That gets to another point I just want to touch on. Spotted Apatalotes are leaf mimics. So that's an Apatalotes with a species called the angel. You've all heard about leaf litter. You know, the leaf blower guy, they're death on lots of critters, including things like that have evolved to be the leaves. So during the day, these moths just sit down there like that. You can't see them. So leaving leaf litter is a good thing, and we put a plug for that in the book. Just save things like that. River birch is a really good one, easy to grow. Lots of the big silk moths, like the imperial moths, come off of that. So if you want silk moss, river birch is a great choice. With a caterpillar, it's just amazing. Another giant. Beech are good. Beech is underutilized, and I don't know why. As a landscape plant, it's one of the showiest trees we've got, probably, and a heavyweight. Now we're getting into the heavyweight world where hundreds of species of moths are spawned off these types of trees. There's specialists right there on the model prominent. Here's the moth. Here's the head. Here's the tips of the wings, becoming one with the lichens on the tree. Sycamore's another great one. Very, very ornamental tree, in my opinion. Pretty easy to grow. Full of specialists. This is why yellow-throated warblers are so smitten with sycamores. They've got a lock on things like sycamore tussock moth caterpillars that only eat sycamores. And then there's what that moth becomes, again, down in the garden, pollinating milkweed. Maples are very important. I have to say I detest the Norway maple, king crimsons, those purple leaf trees. For some reason people like purple leaves, I think. But a tree like that doesn't attract anything. It's a dead zone. You might as well just create a cement tree and paint it for all the good it does ecologically. But we have that. That's a sugar maple. That is so much cooler. And it's spawning tons of cool moss. Red maple, seen in an ornamental situation in the wild, another good tree, easy to grow. Here's one of the specialists that comes off of maples. It's a wasp mimic. There's some moss that do this to perfection. That's one of them. But the oaks are the heavyweights. We all know this. Doug Talmy just wrote a book on oaks. Basically a homage to oaks and their value ecologically. So red oaks and white oaks are what we recommend in the book because they're the easiest ones to get and grow, and they're the heavy lifters. So a white oak like that, that's said to be 600 years old. It's in my home state. over its lifetime has spawned millions and literally millions of caterpillars, just this one tree. 500 species of moths, more than that, are hosted by oaks like that. So they're the ultimate heavyweight. A lot of really cool stuff too, like that. The white-blotched heterocampa, another consummate mimic of lichen dappled bark, is an adult. And then if you're really lucky, a true holy grail. This is also an oak specialist, the pink prominent. It's not very common. We don't know why. We just don't think they come to light, so we don't see them. So anyway, that's the case that we really try and robustly build in the book, why this is important for people who might not know. It produces a lot more biodiversity. That's the bottom line, native flora over non-native flora. And it atones for all this habitat loss that we've done. My state is 1/3 of my state is farmland now. That's a big habitat loss. So everyone can help in their own little yard footprint, and collectively that means big things if more people did it. That's it. Thanks.